Hey! 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 The sky was dim, and the sound of wood planing came from a shop, and it spread far in the silent night. There is a plaque in front of this shop with the words Su's Coffin Shop written on it. For a while, the sound of wood planing stopped. Subai looked at the wooden components in front of him, stunned, and seemed a little absent-minded. At this moment, the shop door was knocked. Hearing this sound, Subai suddenly turned around, staring at the door firmly. At this time, there was an old woman standing at the door, looking at him in surprise. "Su, Master Su, did I scare you?" the old woman asked with some hesitation, looking at Subai's alert look. Hearing her voice, Subai regained his senses, turned her body in another direction, and faced the old woman, shook her head and said, "No, it's just getting so late now, why are you here, and he?" "Hey!" The old woman sighed softly when she heard the words, and looked at the wooden components on the ground and said, "Didn't I have the balance of the coffin last time? Now my son is buried, I will send you the balance of the arrears." "Ns. said, her eyes were a little red. Subai heard the words and said nothing. This old woman is his client, whose surname is He, and her name is He Shun Niang. Speaking of He Shun Niang, her life is extremely hard. 25 years ago, her husband suddenly died violently. She and her son depended on each other and worked hard to raise his son. But just a while ago, her son died suddenly. The body was found in a stinking ditch. When it was found, there was no human form. The police also came to investigate, but the murderer has not been found." "Sorrow!" Subai whispered. He Shun Niang wiped her tears. "Thank you, Master Su, you are a good person, and you should pay more attention to your safety in the future. Don't be like my son." Speaking of this, her tears couldn't stop streaming down. What she didn't notice was that Subai's body froze when she said pay attention to your safety. Afterwards, the old woman chatted for a while, leaving the balance of the coffin and leaving. Looking at the 800 yuan on the table, Subai shook his head and stuffed the money into his pocket. At this time, he turned his body, and the blood stains on his back were clearly visible under the light. "Pay attention to your own safety," Subai murmured, stretched out his hand, touched the back of his head, and looked at the corner at the same time. In the dark corner of the coffin shop, there is a pool of blood that blends with darkness. If you don't look carefully, it is impossible to see clearly. Subai walked to the corner and picked up a blood-stained claw hammer from the blood water. Looking at the claw hammer, he felt a phantom pain in the back of his head. Just tonight, he was killed. The one who killed him used this claw hammer. And he, now unexpectedly came alive, and the injuries on his head disappeared. Sighed softly, Subai put the claw hammer aside, and then took the sawdust that was just shaved out and sprinkled it on the blood, covering it up. In any case, he can't let people know that he has died once. Subai had a hunch in his heart that if people knew that he had been resurrected, he would definitely get into big trouble. When covered the blood stains, hatred rose in Subai's heart. He is an orphan. His parents lost their lives in an explosion 6 months ago. Because of this, he inherited this coffin shop and inherited the property of his parents. And because he is an orphan, he was targeted. That person took all his money and killed his hammer in the coffin shop. Because he is an orphan and no relatives can help him. He is dead. It may take many days to be discovered. When the time comes, it will be impossible to find the murderer. Squeezed the claw hammer, Subai calmed himself down. Although he hates the man who killed himself now, he can't call the police at all. Because there were no dead in this murder. Hey! Subai exhaled a stale breath, wiped the blood on the claw hammer with sawdust, then wrapped the claw hammer with cloth and stuffed it into his arms. If one day, he meets the person who killed himself, he must use this hammer to hammer that person to death. After cleaning up the blood stains a bit, Subai put a piece of clothing on himself to hide the blood stains, then turned off the shop lights, locked the door, and walked towards the apartment building behind. His family lives in Unit 404, Unit 4, Linhee apartment, just behind the shop, and it won't take long to walk there. Went up to the 4th floor and looked at the light on the side of 405, Suabai paused, then opened the door of 404 and walked in. Enters the room, turns on the light, and what is greeted is a room that has been turned upside down. Seeing the scene in front of him, Suabai looked calm, not surprised. Because he was kidnapped in the room first. Actually, in many places in the house, Suabai kept some weapons such as switch knives and wooden sticks. This is what he prepared when he lived alone. But these measures are of no use at all. The man knocked him to the ground as soon as he came in, making him unable to even call for help, and he was extremely decisive. Suabai pushed the door to death with a wooden stick, and then silently packed up the objects in the room. Reading www.yunsha.com restored the place to its original appearance. After finishing this, he went into the bathroom, threw the clothes aside, and used the shower to clean up the smell from his body. Slap, slap, slap. When Suabai was taking a bath, there was a murmur of noise outside. Hearing this sound, his body immediately stopped moving, listening carefully to the outside sound. At this time, any sound will make Suabai be a soldier. At the same time, he felt an unprecedented palpitations, as if something was happening outside. Suabai held his breath and put his body in a stiff condition without making any sound. With the rustling water of the sprinkler, the outside sound gradually disappeared. At this time, the palpitations in Suabai's heart disappeared. At this time, there was a glimmer of enlightenment in his heart, and he looked at his arm. At this time, Suabai discovered that he didn't know when there was a gold coffin pattern on his arm. And, on the golden coffin, there is a small black spot rippling around. Suabai put his arm close to him, and looked carefully at the black spot. Perceive that a nearby person has just died, named Suabai, gain a basic attribute point, perception +1. The information on the black dot came into his mind. Perceive that a nearby person has just died, the name Lu Zhu, gain a basic attribute point, strength +1. Was when Suabai was shocked, a more abrupt message also came into his mind at the same time. At the same time, an additional attribute point suddenly appeared on the golden coffin. Someone died? Someone died? Perceiving the information just now, Suabai was stunned, staring blankly at the sudden increase in black spots. At this time, he suddenly felt his body muscles begin to tighten, and the fat in his stomach and limbs was disappearing quickly. If someone dies nearby, I will be able to get attribute points. Suabai looked at the golden coffin on his arm, thinking about the information from just now, and felt a little clear in his heart. But he soon discovered the strange place. If someone just died, it is normal for him to obtain a basic attribute point. But why are there two basic attribute points in the golden coffin? One is perception +1, and the other is strength +1. No. Suabai suddenly sounded the message just now, with his name marked on it. One of them is himself. Thinking of this, Suabai suddenly understood everything. After he died, he gained the basic attribute point of wisdom +1. This is why he can perceive the danger outside just now. Then, Suabai paused, put on his clothes, picked up the claw hammer on the side and walked to the door. Listened quietly for a while, seeing that there was no movement, he opened the door gently and walked outside quietly. He was not wearing shoes at this time, so there was no sound from his feet. Everything seemed silent. Suabai felt that he still had to come out. Being here today, it's weird to die alone, but it's a coincidence that another one is dead now. This can't help him not wanting to kill the person who just killed him, perhaps the murderer who killed him. Walking into the stairwell, Suabai heard a rustling sound from the upper floor again. He held his breath, squeezed the hammer, and walked upstairs. After walking upstairs, Suabai walked through several houses to the place with the clearest noise. At this time, he realized that the noise came from room 503. At the same time, Suabai noticed a very strange thing. In the sound, there was a woman's moan. As if, was doing something indescribable. Suabai frowned tightly, walked to the door of room 503, and looked inside through the window of 503. Then, he saw the neighbor Zhu Yingying walking out of the kitchen wearing a white dress. Zhu Yingying has a delicate face and an enchanting posture. She is wearing a tight-fitting white dress. Some parts of the dress are hollowed out, revealing her white jade-like skin. Zhu Yingying is Suabai's neighbor, beautiful and enchanting. It can be said that she is the goddess in many men's hearts. It's just that Suabai hasn't caught a cold with her all the time. Because this woman will take the man home for the night every other time, the wind reviews are not very good. For this kind of person, Suabai naturally has no good feelings in his heart. Even if he looks good, it is useless. However, to his surprise at this time, Zhu Yingying walked out of the kitchen with a sharp knife. Who's going to put a boning knife at home? Suabai knew the knife in Zhu Yingying's hand. That is a knife used for bone removal, with a long and narrow blade and a sharp top. This kind of ordinary people would never use it. Only the butcher in the vegetable market would have this kind of knife. After that, Suabai saw Zhu Yingying walking to the sofa with a boning knife, and lifted the cloth on the sofa. At this time, he discovered that there was a male corpse lying on the sofa. As for why Suabai knew it was a corpse, that's because the head of the corpse turned 180 degrees. Ordinary people cannot live at all. Chuck chuck. Zhu Yingying's face was red, and she chuckled and panted, and straightened the man's head. Then, a scene that frightened Suabai happened. Zhu Yingying picked up the boning knife in her hand and inserted it into the corpse. He never thought that this woman turned out to be a murderer. And a very abnormal murderer. Seeing Zhu Yingying split the corpse with a sharp knife, Suabai felt a panic of fear occupying the bottom of his heart, and every sound made him feel chills all over his body. However, immediately something more frightening happened to him. The divided body unexpectedly got up and hugged Zhu Yingying. Scam! Suabai's scalp exploded when he saw this scene. This kind of thing, no matter who sees it, there will be an uncontrollable fear in his heart. Suabai felt that his legs could no longer move. As if his legs are no longer his legs. Must leave here. Suabai gritted his teeth, tried to perceive his legs, let his legs regain consciousness, and wanted to escape from here. If Zhu Yingying finds out, he must be finished. After a while, he finally felt his feet regain consciousness, and walked cautiously towards his room downstairs. After entering his room, Suabai lay on the bed, and the body that had just been showered was covered with sweat. Today he experienced a lot of weird things. He was killed, then resurrected, and received a golden coffin. After, he saw with his own eyes that neighbor Zhu Yingying upstairs was dissecting the body. It's incredible. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Suabai twitched. At this time, he couldn't sleep anymore. After all, there is a murderer upstairs. And when it was midnight, Suabai suddenly heard the sound of footsteps coming upstairs. Then, the sound of footsteps stopped outside his window. At this time, Suabai's expression paused, and he swallowed. Then, seeing no movement, he boldly looked out the window. Then, he saw the dead man standing at the top of the stairs. It's the dead person. Suabai was taken aback, then he saw the person outside and walked downstairs. As if nothing happened just now. At this time, Suabai thought a lot and understood a lot of things. Zhu Yingying should have the ability to make the dead move, and be able to make perjury. Is the same, she can always avoid the sanctions of the law. But, what does this have to do with me? Suabai paused and sighed softly. He is not going to call the police. Now that the person who killed him has not been found, he is naturally unlikely to cause such a big trouble for Zhu Yingying. This kind of person with powerful ability is definitely not something he can afford. Not to mention, Zhu Yingying was able to move the body, and it would be difficult for the police to find evidence of Zhu Yingying's murder. At that time, Zhu Yingying might not be caught, but he would make a fuss himself. As for Zhu Yingying, because she was not caught by the police and continued to kill people, that has nothing to do with him. After all, he wasn't murdering. He just wants to protect himself. There is no need to impose the sins committed by others on the lonely person like him. Early the next morning, Suabai put on his school uniform, carried a book bag, and walked towards the bus stop sign. In fact, besides being a coffin shop owner, he is also a student. Zhejiang City No. 1 Middle School, a student in Class 1 of Senior 3. The coffin shop is just something he maintains in his spare time, and he doesn't open the door much. Hey! The bus stopped, and Suabai walked on the bus. At this time, a girl hurriedly ran up from a distance. Wait a minute, sir, there are still people who are going to get on the bus. Suabai shouted to the driver in front, and then found a seat on his own. The girl ran into the bus, and after casting a coin, she looked at Suabai gratefully. But Suabai turned his head and looked at the scenery outside the window as if he hadn't done anything. The girl's name is Xiaoming Shan. She is a neighbor who lives in room 405 next to him and a classmate. It was her who turned on the lights so late yesterday. Actually, in the past, Suabai had a pretty good relationship with her. However, since the death of his parents, Suabai has no contact with many people, and communicates less with the people around him, and his feelings have faded. After Xiaoming Shan got in the car, she glanced at Suabai, saw that he was not looking at herself, pursed her lips, and sat in a seat farther away from Suabai. The bus started and the door slowly closed. Then passed by a few more stations, and some passengers came up. When there were more passengers, the bus also started to noisy. Suabai looked at his arm, only hair on it, nothing else. He has now discovered that the golden coffin will only appear when he obtains the basic attribute points, and it will not appear at other times. This should be the ability I gained after I was resurrected. Suabai thought in his heart. He quickly accepted that he was carrying a golden coffin on his body. Because of his resurrection, it is more unacceptable than carrying a golden coffin on him. And, upstairs, there is a murderer with special abilities. Hey! When Suabai was thinking about things, the bus suddenly stopped. He frowned slightly, and suddenly there was a throbbing in his heart. He couldn't help turning his head to look forward to where Xiaoming Shan was sitting. At this time, there is a middle-aged man in clothes and leather shoes, who is approaching Xiaoming Shan's position. The meticulously dressed middle-aged man wore a wretched smile on his face when he approached Xiaoming Shan. Looking at the wretched smile on the middle-aged man's face, Suabai looked under him again, and a feeling of disgust was immediately born in his heart. I saw the middle-aged man's pants, and I don't know when he set up a small tent. Suabai stood up, walked quickly towards the middle-aged man, and sat next to Xiaoming Shan directly before the middle-aged man sat down. Suabai. Xiaoming Shan's face flushed when Suabai was sitting abruptly next to her. How's your brother doing? I heard he is now in plain clothes. Suabai glanced at the middle-aged man with an angry look beside him, looked at Xiaoming Shan and asked calmly. The middle-aged man beside heard this, his face changed slightly, and he found a place to sit down next to him. Xiaoming Shan lowered her head and responded softly, he was promoted to plain clothes some time ago. Speaking of this, her eyes were a little worried, and she looked at Suabai, but because he was promoted to a plain clothes police officer, he was also busy. Recently, I have been returning very late and I am very worried about him. Yet. Suabai nodded, and did not answer any more. In his words, Xiaoming Shan's brother was brought out, just to make the middle-aged man behind him jealous, and he didn't mean to talk to Xiaoming Shan about his parents. That. Zhao Mingshan looked at Suibai and hesitated. Suibai, can you not always avoid me in the future? Suibai listened to her, but did not speak. Seeing him not speaking, Zhao Mingshan bit her lip and fell silent. After a few more stops, some people came up and crowded the bus. You're at the Lanling intersection. Passengers who are going to get off, please bring your belongings and get off from the back door. Please be careful when you open the door. Get off the bus and walk well. Next stop, Zhejiang No. 1 Middle School. Passengers who got off the bus, go to the back door. Do it in advance. Ready to get off the bus. At this time, there was a reminder in the car. Hearing this sound, Suibai got up and walked towards the back door. Zhao Mingshan saw this and immediately followed Suibai. Along the way, Suibai consciously or unconsciously resisted the men around him for Zhao Mingshan. When they reached the door of the rear car, there were finally fewer people, and the two of them were also relieved. Suibai, thank you. Zhao Mingshan whispered beside Suibai. But Suibai didn't hear him, his expression remained unchanged. After that, the bus drove for another 10 minutes or so until it reached the gate of Zhejiang No. 1 Middle School. Zhejiang No. 1 Middle School is here, passengers who are going to get off. The prompt sounded. With the beep, the door slowly opened. The students in the car walked out of the car like a quarry. Zhao Mingshan also followed the people around and got out of the car. However, when Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com got off the car, she suddenly discovered that Suibai had not got off the car. Ah! At this time, there was a scream in the car. Then there was a scream, and Suibai followed the crowd with his book bag and got out of the car, merging into the surrounding students. At this time, Zhao Mingshan found that the middle-aged man who wanted to sit next to him was in the car clutching his nose and wailing. Then the car door closed slowly and drove away. This was made by Suibai. Zhao Mingshan watched the vehicle go away. Suddenly a bold conjecture appeared in her heart. Zhao Mingshan. But she didn't wait for her to figure it out. A girl had already walked over and interrupted her thoughts. What are you thinking about? The girl teased with a smile on her face. You shouldn't be thinking about Suibai. Tan Yunyin. What are you talking about? Zhao Mingshan blushed and said with shame. Don't you think about him? Tan Yunyin smiled, and then said a little strangely, but speaking of it, Suibai is so abnormal today. He was far away from you before, and suddenly he is sitting next to you today. I thought that wretched uncle would sit next to you. Worthy uncle. Zhao Mingshan was startled, a little strange in her heart. Yes, I found out when I got in the car, and when I saw a wretched uncle looking at you, he still touched his crotch. Tan Yunyin whispered toward Zhao Mingshan. When she said that, Zhao Mingshan felt a strange feeling in her heart. Could it be that Suibai found out what the middle-aged uncle did to him, and then hit the person? Thinking of this, a sweet feeling immediately rose in her heart, like a child who had eaten fructose. At this time, Suibai is sitting in the classroom. He looked at his book bag and was silent. There was an obvious pool of blood on the book bag at this time. This is the result of pushing the book bag on the face of the middle-aged man before getting off the car. If it is an ordinary book, this effect may not be achieved. But if you add a claw hammer, that's not necessarily the case. Yes, he took the claw hammer to school. Suibai, who has already died once, is full of vigilance about his surroundings, so he will naturally bring weapons. In fact, Suibai's reason is very clear. It is actually unnecessary to hit the middle-aged man this morning. Because even if he hits with a book bag when there is a flow of people, he may be photographed by the camera. It has no effect other than getting him into trouble. But he still did that. Suibai recalled what had happened before. He clearly felt that the hostility in his heart was very heavy at the time, and his mind was blank. At that time, he even wanted to kill. If it were not for the last reason to suppress, he would definitely not be as simple as just smashing people. Thinking about what happened just now, Subai was a little surprised. According to him before, he would never do this. As if he was affected by something after his resurrection, there was a dark side in his heart, which constantly eroded him and made him make dangerous moves. It's just that Subai thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out what was going on in his heart. Forget it, I don't want to. He let out a foul breath. Fortunately, this matter has not reached the point of irreversibility, so he can pay more attention to it in the future. According to the angle at the time, the camera should not be able to take pictures. Then, Subai took out the breakfast he bought today and ate it. What he ate today was ordinary steamed buns. Today, he doesn't have much money except for the 800 yuan balance that he Shun Niang gave yesterday. The valuable things and all the money in his family were robbed by the man who killed him. Thinking of this, Subai paused while eating the steamed buns, with a thoughtful look in his eyes. If it is a normal robber, he will definitely only stare at items of great value and large banknotes. And will not search all the money cleanly, not even let go of even a dime. That person is absolutely short of money. And the lack of money is to the point that even a dime is taken away. It is either to use the money to treat a disease, or to owe a loan shark, and you will die if you don't pay it back. Thinking about the meticulousness of the previous person's work, Subai felt that the former was more likely. Because the murderer did things in an orderly manner, he looked like a very self-disciplined person. He could not imagine that such a person would borrow loan sharks. The first hospital of Zhejiang City, the second hospital of Zhejiang City. Thinking of this, Subai began to think of the famous hospitals in the city. He wanted to find that person, and then murder him. Whether this person killed his own hatred, or this person knows the secret of his resurrection, this person must die. In the middle of writing, Subai stopped, and an indescribable fear suddenly appeared in his heart. At this time, he suddenly discovered that as a high school student, he didn't know when he had the courage to kill. This is not normal. Reminiscing about what happened this morning, Subai looked at his arm and his face became a little cloudy. He was not sure before, but now it seems that there is definitely something wrong with his mind. Subai. At this time, a boy suddenly sat down on the side. Come here is Subai's table mate, Su Xiaoqing. How do you eat steamed buns today? Su Xiaoqing looked at the breakfast in front of Subai and asked strangely. In the past, Subai always ate meat buns. No money. Subai glanced at Su Xiaoqing, folded the notebook in his hand calmly, and continued to nibble on the buns. No money. Su Xiaoqing looked a little weird when he heard this, but he knew that after Subai's parents died, Subai inherited his parents' property. How could he not have money? It can be said that Subai is definitely the richest person in the school. Seeing Su Xiaoqing's expression, Subai naturally understood what he was thinking. But unfortunately, all the wealthy things in his family were robbed. Originally, if he did not resurrect, he could ask the police for help. But just because he was resurrected, some things were not easy to handle. Can't tell the police, he was resurrected, right? The police would throw him to a mental hospital like that. On the other hand, if the police believe him, it is even more terrifying. In the Federation, powerful people will definitely slice him. Subai breathed out gently, and continued to gnaw on the buns, without responding to Su Xiaoqing. Hey! At this time, Su Xiaoqing seemed to have discovered something exciting and pushed Subai with his elbow. Look, Tan Yunyan is staring at me. Subai was startled, and looked up, only to see two girls coming in at the door of the class. Is Zhao Shan and Tan Yunyan. At this time, both of them looked at them. Subai frowned slightly. Combining with what happened this morning, he knew in his heart that Zhao Shan and Tan Yunyan were looking at themselves, not Su Xiaoqing next to them. You said, does Tan Yunyan like me too? Su Xiaoqing asked in a low voice towards Subai. perhaps. Subai took a sip of water and dealt with it in a perfunctory manner. The results of Su Xiaoqing and Tan Yunyan are quite different. Tan Yunyan ranked second in grade in the monthly exam last month, with almost 680 points. It is appropriate to go to Metropolis University. Su Xiaoqing's results are only in the middle of the school, with a gap of more than 100 points. Subai felt that even if two people fell in love, there would be no results. And Tan Yunyan didn't mean anything to Su Xiaoqing, and she was all eager to study. It's just that Su Xiaoqing is his friend, and Subai doesn't want to hit him on this matter. Then, you read www.yuyuganshu.com. Su Xiaoqing was chattering non-stop next to Subai. Subai occasionally responded a few times, but his mind was not here at all. There are two things he is thinking about now. One is to investigate the information about his murderer. The other is Zhu Yingying upstairs. I'm going to move. Subai thought in his heart. Whether it was the murderer who killed a carbine or Zhu Yingying upstairs, this was a threat to his life. Only by moving can we stay away from danger. But he is the only money he has now, which is 800 yuan, which is enough for 1 month's rent in Zhejiang City. But now most of the rent is 1 foroni, which is not enough. By the way, Su Xiaoqing, is anyone in your family recently? At this time, Subai suddenly thought of something and asked Su Xiaoqing next to him. He remembered that Su Xiaoqing was also a day student, and his parents were away all year round. In other words, he may be able to live in Su Xiaoqing's house. If he lives in Su Xiaoqing's house, he can save part of the money. My parents just came back, what's the matter? Su Xiaoqing asked with some confusion. It's nothing. Subai shook his head, choking his thoughts to death in his belly. Su Xiaoqing's parents are here, and he couldn't live in the past. He also knows the situation of Su Xiaoqing's house, like himself, 2 rooms and 1 living room, but 50 square meters. It's a bit awkward to live in a family of 3, let alone add an outsider. Oh! Su Xiaoqing nodded, and continued to stare at Tan Yunyan in the distance, with an obsessive look on his face. Seeing his look like Brother Pig, Subai sighed lightly. Putting things on Su Xiaoqing's body is a bit unreliable. At this time, the class bell rang. After a while, I started self-study early. Subai took out his language documents and looked at it. It's just that, at this time, he looked at these books and didn't know why he felt a little bit unable to stand it. His life has been disrupted, and it is difficult to return to peace. Shook his head slightly, Subai put his upset thoughts behind him, and started reading seriously. No matter what happens later, he will definitely not let go of studying. The last wish of his parents is that he should go to a good university. Of course, besides reading books, he now has a few more things to do. Since the golden coffin will die because of someone, give yourself attribute points. Then he thinks he can go to places where people often die and stay nearby. Thinking of this, Subai also had some cares in his heart. After making some money with the coffin shop, he went to some big hospitals. That way, if someone dies, he can get basic attribute points. Now that he has tasted the sweetness, he can't wait to get more basic attribute points. Every attribute point given to him by the golden coffin is very useful. For example, perception. If he hadn't got a little perception yesterday, then he wouldn't be able to spot Zhu Yingying's abnormality upstairs at all. For him, this is undoubtedly a life-saving ability. If he had this perception attribute, he would never die in the hands of others. As for another power attribute point, Subai also tested it this morning. Before, he could only do 25 push-ups, but now he can easily do 80 or 90 push-ups. Because of this change, Subai is very eager for basic attribute points. Subai. When Subai was thinking about it, a voice appeared at the door. Subai was startled, and looked at the door, only to see the head teacher Yeshaya Hua beckoning to him. Then, he got up from his seat and walked towards the door. After reaching the door, Yeshayahua took him to a corner. "Subai, I also know the situation in your home." When he reached the corner, Yeshayahua was silent, and then looked at Subai, "But now it's a third year in high school, you should put your mind on studying. I believe your parents too. I don't want you to be like this." Subai heard this silently. After his parents passed away half a year ago, he was a bit of a waste of study. Before, he could still be ranked within the top 10 in his studies, but now he has stepped back a lot. "Teacher, I will pay attention." Subai took a deep breath and said solemnly. "Well, I believe you." Yeshayahua patted Subai on the shoulder, and said with a smile, "You have always been a very smart boy. You must know how to score better than the other hairy boys in the class." Then the two chatted about some trivial things, and Subai entered the classroom and continued to read early. After experiencing the resurrection, his heart has begun to calm down. After a short while, the bell rang, and self-study ends early. But at this time, Subai is still reading, with notes in his hand. At this time, a figure walked in front of him, blocking the sunlight. Subai felt his eyes go dark, froze, looked up, and saw Zhao Mingshan's beautiful face. "I also heard some of what Mr. Ye said. If you need any notes, you can also come to me," Zhao Mingshan whispered. "Okay, thank you." Subai paused and nodded. Zhao Mingshan is the first in the school, with a score of more than 720 points. Her notes are indeed very useful. Hearing Subai's words, Zhao Mingshan's face was a little red, and she walked towards her seat. At this time, the eyes of the people in the class looking at the two of them suddenly changed. At this time, the feelings of the campus are in a stage of ignorance, and it is rare to see such a straightforward one. "Hey!" Su Xiaoqing patted Subai on the shoulder, with a meaningful smile on his face. "Unexpectedly, you have such a good relationship with Zhao Mingshan. She and I are neighbors." Subai glanced at him and said flatly. "Oh." Su Xiaoqing showed an understanding look on his face, as if he understood something. "By the way, you like Tan Yunyin, or I'll talk to Tan Yunyin directly." Subai glanced at Su Xiaoqing and asked lightly. Su Xiaoqing's face became stiff when he heard the words, and he immediately waved his hands like a flat ball, and said with a smile, forget it, brother Su, I'm kidding you. It's not wrong that he likes Tan Yunyin, but he only dared to hide this like in his heart, and he didn't dare to show it." Subai saw his appearance, smiled, and continued to read the book in his hand. On the other side, Zhao Mingshan returned to her seat, and Tan Yunyin immediately lowered her voice and said, "Look, you still said that you are not interested in Subai, aren't you looking for him now?" Hearing her words, Zhao Mingshan's face was slightly flushed, and she was a little embarrassed and said, "I'm thanking him for helping me this morning." "Oh." Tan Yunyin stretched out her voice, teasing a little, then, "Should we agree with her body next?" Zhao Mingshan's face became even more red, and she couldn't help being a little angry and said, "Tan Yunyin, if you do this again, I won't talk to you anymore." Okay, I dare not." Tan Yunyin said hurriedly when he heard him say this. She knows her character at the same table. If she really decides to ignore herself, she will definitely not say a word to herself for several weeks. If so, Tan Yunyin felt that she would be suffocated to death. At this time, a group of Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com were chatting nearby. "Have you heard? A girl in the second middle school disappeared." "Of course I heard, many of my friends have posted her missing person notices in the circle of friends." "Hey, according to my friend in the second high school, that girl has always been very easy to get along with. She used to fight with her classmates before, so she disappeared." "Yes, that's weird. I heard from her classmates that she disappeared the night before, and she couldn't contact her mobile phone. She walked about 400 steps the day before yesterday. She didn't take one step yesterday. I'm afraid it is dangerous. You don't have to think too much, the police department has already stepped in, and they will find the girl. Listening to his classmates, Suabai paused when he read the book. Isn't this another murderer? Thinking of this, Suabai shook his head. No matter how he felt, he couldn't be so unlucky. This kind of murderer, others may not encounter so many in their lifetime, how can I encounter 3 in 2 days? I hope there is nothing wrong. Suabai said silently in his heart, and then glanced at Zhao Mingshan. If there are really murderers who stare at girls, then girls like Zhao Mingshan who take the bus every night would be very dangerous. Perhaps, he should look after Zhao Mingshan's copy of his notes, and take care of Zhao Mingshan. Thinking of this, Suabai was startled. Actually, after I went to high school, didn't it always be like this? Only started to change after the parents died. What do you think? Suabai shook his head, and wiped out his messy thoughts. However, he has decided that at some point, he should take care of Zhao Mingshan. One day's course hurriedly passed. After Suabai finished his evening study, he arrived in front of the bus stop and waited for the last bus. As a day student, I will study by night at 9:30. The last train also departs from this point. Beside him, there are also some classmates. These are all day students, but the people here are not all on the same bus as Suabai. After a while, a few buses came and took the students here 7 or 8. There are only 3 or 5 of Suabai, Zhao Mingshan, and other classmates left at the stop sign. Tan Yunyan should have gone together, but Tan Yunyan left early because of some family affairs. Bus 404 stopped. Suabai, Zhao Mingshan, and others got into the car and found a seat. The bus started, and Suabai looked out the window and sighed inwardly as he watched the outside scenery receding continuously. He did not find a place to live after all. The main reason is that he is too poor. At this time, Suabai had the idea of selling the house and the coffin shop in his heart. But he thought that his parents had bought his house, and he couldn't let it down after all. Maybe it's time to make a few coffins and sell them. Suabai muttered in his heart. He has followed his parents for some time, and he is also very proficient in carpentry crafts. Now there are some coffins in the coffin shop warehouse. If he sells some coffins, he will have enough money to move. At this time, Suabai suddenly looked at Zhao Mingshan in front of him. At this time, he suddenly remembered. Zhao Mingshan also lives in that apartment, do you want to remind her? But as soon as the idea came out, Suabai immediately rejected it. All men who entered Zhu Yingying's room. In other words, Zhu Yingying's goal is not to have women at all. And if he told Zhao Mingshan, it might expose Zhao Mingshan to flaws and attract Zhu Yingying's attention. Like that, Zhao Mingshan is really dangerous. As for Zhao Mingshan's brother, it is even more unnecessary. Zhao Mingshan's brother is a plainclothes policeman, no matter how rampant Zhu Yingying is, it is impossible to catch the police. At this time, the bus stopped in front of a platform. Then, a beautiful woman came up from the front. Seeing the woman, Suabai's face changed slightly. This person is not someone else, but Zhu Yingying. He felt like he was lucky, and he would meet her in the car at night. After Zhu Yingying came up, she glanced at the people in the field. When she saw Suabai, her eyes lit up. She walked slowly to the side of Suabai and sat down. As she sat down, a good smell of perfume spread immediately. But at this time Suabai didn't feel the smell of the perfume at all. Because he knew that Zhu Yingying in front of him was a monster that didn't blink. Brother Su, school is over. Zhu Yingying looked at Suabai and smiled. Suabai responded and continued to look out the window. At this moment, his mind is full of scenes of Zhu Yingying splitting the body with an evisceration knife, and Zhu Yingying's perverted and satisfying smile. Now even if Zhu Yingying smiles beautifully, he will not have the slightest ripple in his mind. Even, he didn't want to have any contact with this person at all. Why, brother Su doesn't like me? Zhu Yingying saw Suibai's reaction, and she couldn't help but teasing her. She rubbed her thigh against Suibai's, and at the same time stretched out her hand and landed on Suibai's thigh. Suibai's legs stiffened and tightened. Zhao Mingshan and others who saw this scene in the distance looked at this scene dumbfounded, and they felt that their hearts were shocked. How could there be such a woman? Let go. However, at this time, Suibai's heart, for some reason, a hostile spirit rushed straight into his forehead. At this time, he even had an urge to tear Zhu Yingying into pieces. His face suddenly became cold, he turned his head, a pair of bloodshot eyes looked at Zhu Yingying, and said every word, "Don't make a fuss at me." Hearing what he said, Zhu Yingying's face showed a look of error. She didn't expect that this little brother Su's effort in a blink of an eye was like a person changed. Moreover, it was the first time I heard someone say she was screaming outside. Thinking of this, Zhu Yingying felt annoyed. Other men couldn't wait to lick her toes. Why should this high school student dare to be so indifferent to herself? Then, she was ready to go one step further. But at this time, Suibai stood up suddenly, squeezed Zhu Yingying away, walked towards the seat of the old, weak, sick, and sat down. The old, weak, sick, and disabled seat is a single seat, so Zhu Yingying can only stare at it, it is impossible to sit there. At the same time, Suibai's face gradually returned to normal in the dark. He resisted the hostile attack again. But it's not the time to be happy, Suibai feels thorns on his back now, and his whole body is weak. Just now, he said that the murderer shows off, how is this different from dancing on death? Now his inner throbbing has reached the extreme, as if he would die at any time. However, it's no wonder Suibai just now, the hostility just now completely controlled his brain, and he didn't have normal thinking at all. It's pretty good that he can control himself from breaking out, how can he still have the energy to control his words and deeds? Calm down, I want to calm down. Suibai breathed out gently in his heart, and forced himself to calm down. In any case, he couldn't let Zhu Yingying see anything unusual. Now, Zhu Yingying may not necessarily kill herself, but if Zhu Yingying finds out that she may know her secret, then she will undoubtedly die. When Suibai was thinking about countermeasures, the bus stopped again and several men walked up. Suibai seemed to feel something, and looked at the group of people. When he saw one of the men, he was stunned. This man looks about 28 or 99 years old. His hair is relatively short, his face is cut like a knife, and the lines are clear. With the addition of fine stubble and some shabby leather clothes, he has a homeless temperament. This person, Suibai knows, he is Zhao Mingshan's brother, Zhao Kongqing. Is a plainclothes police officer. Zhao Kongqing made Suibai's memory very deep, because Zhao Kongqing had a centipede-like scar on his left face. The scar is deep and straight. Based on the experience of carpenter Suibai with a knife, he felt that the scar was definitely not caused by accident. 8 out of 10 are drawn by sharp tools such as daggers. And the person who scratched the scar had a very stable hand, it was definitely not caused by accident. Suibai frowned slightly. He found that tonight is very weird. People that he hadn't seen before have all come. There are murderers and there are police officers. But immediately, Suibai discovered something wrong. After Zhao Kongqing got in the car, he didn't even glance at Zhao Mingshan. He sat around Zhu Yingying with the men who had just got on the car. At this time, the atmosphere in the car became a little quieter, only the friction of the tires and the ground constantly echoed in the car. Suibai had already understood at this time that Zhao Kongqing and the people next to him were all plainclothes police officers in all likelihood, rushing over to Zhu Yingying. It is estimated that Zhu Yingying's murder must have been found out. But, are these people Zhu Yingying's opponents? Suibai felt uncertain again in his heart. He has seen the scene of the body recovering. Moreover, the person Zhu Yingying killed was a man. Her strength cannot be evaluated by ordinary women. The life and death crisis that Zhu Yingying brought to her just now is extremely clear, making him somewhat doubt whether this woman is a normal person. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. At this time, Zhu Yingying seemed to have also noticed something wrong, and her expression of irritation gradually became a little cold. For a while, there was a strange and quiet atmosphere in the car. Then, the bus continued to drive forward. However, after a few stops, no one got on the bus. "It's really today," the bus driver complained. After that, the bus was driving in an unmanned city. There was no one on the road. Instead, the students got off. At this time, only Suibai, Zhao Mingshan, Zhu Yingying, and the police behind were left in the car. "Hey!" The bus stopped in the LC area. Upon seeing this, Suibai grabbed Zhao Mingshan, who was somewhat at a loss, and got out of the car. When they got off the bus started, and the two watched the vehicle gradually go away in front of the stop sign. "Suibai, do you know what?" Zhao Mingshan looked at Suibai with a little panic in her heart. When she saw her brother before, she felt something was wrong. In the past, her brother would never be so indifferent when he saw her. "I don't know, I should be on a mission." Suibai looked at the vehicles going away, pretending to be calm, and said to Zhao Mingshan, "Don't worry too much. Go back and rest early. You will probably see him tomorrow." After speaking, he walked towards the apartment. Zhao Mingshan on the side saw this, bit her lip, followed Suibai, and walked towards the apartment. After went upstairs, Zhao Mingshan and Suibai entered their respective rooms. But not long after, 404's door was opened, and Suibai walked out of the room. At this time, he changed into black clothes, not conspicuous at all in the dark. After Suibai came out of the room, he went downstairs and walked towards the road. He wanted to see how Zhu Yingying would follow. As a person who is like him, with strange power, Suibai felt that he was absolutely right to observe more. Although it may be dangerous, he thinks it is very worthwhile. Suibai felt that the police and Zhu Yingying were hiding something, as if a magical door was opening towards him. After arriving on the street, Suibai trod along the dark road towards the 404 route. At this time, he suddenly discovered that the road today is exceptionally quiet. He never saw anyone along the way. Suibai also rang suddenly. The bus drove all the way before, and no one was encountered. As a person who often takes this bus, he knows it very well. This is almost impossible. It was people from the police station who drove people away. Suibai guessed in his heart. Then, after he ran for more than half an hour, Suibai finally saw the 404 bus from a distance. But at this time, the bus overturned on the road, surrounded by broken glass. 3 shattered bodies were near the bus, and blood shed all over the ground. At the same time, Zhao Kongqing was on the phone anxiously. Perceive that a person nearby has just died, the name is Li Si, gain a basic attribute point, agility +1. Perceive that a person nearby has just died, his name Zhou Zhongli, gain a basic attribute point, memory +1. Perceive that someone nearby has just died, named Zhu Yingying, gain special attribute points, fighting skill +1. When he got here, 3 messages suddenly appeared in Suibai's heart. It's over. He sensed 3 pieces of information, and was slightly startled. 3 people died. One of them was Zhu Yingying. Obviously, the battle was over. He didn't expect that in less than half an hour, he would be divided into birth and death. At this time, Suibai also felt that he was thinking too much for granted. Life and death were a matter of a moment, and he wouldn't fight for a long time at all, let alone wait for him to come and watch. Woo woo woo. At this time, the police car roared, sandwiching the ambulance, and drove in the direction of Suibai, and drove toward the bus. Suibai quickly hid in the grass on the side of the road, covering himself with his black clothes, so that the people in the police car could not find him at all. As the police car and ambulance approached, rescue work immediately began in full swing. After a while, the ambulance and the police car drove away, and only a few policemen remained at the scene. "Hey!" Subai looked at the police car going away, exhaled gently, and put down the black coat that was covering him. At this time, he didn't want to be spotted by the police station. Then, Subai squatted down and looked at his arm. As expected, the simple golden coffin reappeared. Just now, he gained 2 attribute points, 1 agility, 1 memory, and a special attribute point, fighting skills. However, at this time, Subai found a strange place. There are only 2 black dots and 1 red dot on the golden coffin pattern now. If Zhu Yingying died with a red dot, then the gold coffin on his arm should have 4 black dots and 1 red dot. But now, there are only 2 black dots and 1 red dot. Then, Subai took a closer look and found some black lines on the coffin. These lines are very subtle, and if you don't look closely, you won't be able to see them at all. And these lines bring a strange beauty to this somewhat crude golden coffin, which gives people a strange feeling. Perhaps every time the black spot is taken back, the golden coffin will digest the black spot. Subai's brows frowned slightly. Then, he looked at the red dot again. Looking at the red dot, Subai was a little puzzled. He just felt his body, his memory, and agility can still feel the changes. But that special attribute point, fighting skills, he didn't feel at all. At this time, Subai suddenly had an impulse and stretched out his right hand to touch the coffin pattern on his left forearm. Then, the red dot flew towards his hand immediately. Subai raised his right hand, and a red dot appeared on his fingertips. At this time, he has a feeling that as long as he wants to, he can accept that special attribute point. Even, he can give this special attribute point to others. Really weird ability. Subai murmured, then his mind moved. Immediately afterwards, fighting skills appeared in his mind one by one. These skills seemed to be like a knife cut, which made him remember deeply and integrated. At this moment, Subai felt whether he had really learned fighting skills. There was joy on his face. Now that he has these basic fighting skills, he will not be controlled like before. Perceive the memory of the resurrected person, do you read it? Also at this moment, a message came from the red dot on Subai's hand. Resurrected. Subai was startled. These 3 words gave him a creepy feeling, as if now he was approaching some secrets related to him. He suspects that the so-called resurrected person means someone who has been resurrected just like himself. Read. Subai swallowed, his thoughts flashed. Then, he was in a daze and saw a person's memory, the past. The person looked back, smiling, but it was Zhu Yingying. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Zhu Yingying is from Linchun County. When she was young, she married a man in this county. That man, who cared for her in every possible way before getting married, became a man who likes domestic violence after getting married. He is very vicious to her and beats and scolds her at every turn. And she endured it all the time. But that's it, her husband got worse. Finally one day, her husband beat her to death. After seeing her dead, her husband was very frightened and hid her body in the refrigerator to prevent others from seeing her. But that night, Zhu Yingying was resurrected in the refrigerator. Zhu Yingying, who was resurrected, tied her husband firmly at night, and then slowly cut off her husband's head with a fruit knife. That day, she felt an unparalleled pleasure. After killed her husband, Zhu Yingying discovered that she could actually manipulate her husband's corpse, and her body became stronger than ordinary people after the murder. Then, she manipulated her husband's body and asked him to fake suicide outside. She completed the perfect crime. But this is only the beginning. After Zhu Yingying killed her husband, she became extremely obsessed with things. The dark side of her heart is infinitely magnified, like a monster. In the following years, she moved between several cities and seduced hundreds of men. She did some happy things with those men, and then divided the corpses. It's a pity, today, the police department caught her eye. P.S. The contract status has been changed, thank you for your support. This book is first published in UU Reading, welcome everyone to support. At the same time, I wish you all a happy National Day and have fun. Unfortunately, today, the police department finally caught sight of her. After Subai took Zhao Mingshan out of the car and passed a few more stops, Zhu Yingying suddenly violent and killed 2 policemen, but was quickly shot to death by other plainclothes policemen. In a short span of time, the bus overturned and the 3 lives died. Perceiving Zhu Yingying's memory gradually disappearing, Subai breathed out softly, feeling a little weird in his heart. He did not expect that besides himself, there would be other resurrected people. At the same time, Subai felt that the people after the resurrection seemed a little abnormal. Whether it is him or Zhu Yingying, the hostility in my heart seems to be infinitely magnified. Zhu Yingying used to be a woman who allowed her husband to insult her, but now she has become a murderous criminal. And he, under the influence of the unknown element, his behavior is much different from before. Thinking of this, Subai shuddered. If this is the case, is it a little scary? They are natural criminals. Resurrection. Subai whispered, his heart cold. If this is the case, then the resurrected person should be a state of crossing the street. Took a deep breath, and Subai decided in his heart that in the future, no matter what, he would not be able to talk about his resurrection. Perceiving Zhu Yingying's last wish, she wants to see her child again, can you visit her for her? If Zhu Yingying's last wish is fulfilled, her psychic energy will be absorbed, forming coffin fragments, and you will get the item, magic iron. And when Subai was thinking about something, a message appeared in his mind. Seeing this information, Subai was taken aback. He did not expect that seeing the memory of the resurrected person would have this kind of gain. Help see her child. Subai recalled Zhu Yingying's memory and found that she did have a child. But after Zhu Yingying killed her husband, this child felt cumbersome and threw it to the child's grandparents. At the end, did I think of my child? I don't know if it was hypocrisy or true feelings. Subai shook his head and sighed in his heart. Then, he perceives other things in the message. A few of these words make Subai feel a bit funny. One is Shinix, coffin fragments, and props magic iron. So, only after my golden coffin absorbs psychic energy can the coffin fragments be formed. Subai's brows frowned slightly, thinking in his heart. But, unfortunately, he didn't have any specific information about the Shinix energy or the fragments of the coffin. At this time, Subai can only understand literally that Shinix energy should be a certain kind of energy, and the coffin treasure is probably a certain kind of treasure. Shook his head slightly, and he sensed the prop in the message, magic iron. What surprised Subai was that when he perceives the props, magic iron, a message appeared in his mind. Magic iron, a magical piece of iron that can change its shape, and when it hits an enemy, it allows the user to suppress the hostility in the heart. Seeing this, Subai was startled, he suddenly felt that he was really going to see Zhu Yingying's son. This kind of iron is of great significance to him today. To be honest, after just reading Zhu Yingying's memory, Subai didn't have the confidence to resist the unfounded dark side thoughts. And if there is this kind of magic iron, he will have a certain way to resist. After a pause, Subai had already made a decision in his heart. He was going to Linchun County to visit Zhu Yingying's son. Subai estimated that now September 16th is Thursday, and tomorrow September 17th, Friday, that is to say, if you have a day of class tomorrow, you can have a day and a half rest, and after the rest, it will be the Mid-Autumn Festival. In this way, he has 4.5 days to go to Linchun County. But thinking of this, Subai smiled bitterly. If he were going to Linchun County, he would not know whether the 700 yuan would be enough to spend. Even if it is enough, his living expenses will be gone. At this time, Suabai suddenly remembered something very interesting in Zhu Yingying's memory. Every time Zhu Yingying killed someone, she would ask the deceased to bury the money in a hidden place, and then take it after the matter subsided. This is also the reason why Zhu Yingying has not had a job but has no worries about expenses. And now, it was only a day since the last time he died. This also means that Zhu Yingying has never taken the money. Should I get it? Suabai hesitated. Zhu Yingying went to take it after the matter subsided, because she was afraid that the police would come to her door. And to get the money by himself, it is likely to arouse the suspicion of the police. But immediately, Suabai recalled Zhu Yingying's memory, and found that the places Zhu Yingying buried the dead were very remote, there was no surveillance at all, and the police could not find it even in dreams. The reason why Zhu Yingying waited so long was just because of a guilty heart. Suabai estimated in his heart that the distance between that place and here is about 5 kilometers, and it will take about half an hour to get there. Thinking of this, he walked into the dark trail, bypassed the alert police, and walked into the darkness. About 500 meters away from the police, Suabai ran. At this time, he found that he was obviously different. At this time, he felt that his body was lighter, and he could easily do some actions that he could not do before. Suabai looked at the railing on the side of the road. After thinking for a moment, he leaped slightly and jumped up. Then, he just shook his body and stood firmly on the railing. Is this agility? Suabai felt very magical in his heart. At this time, he felt that this agility attribute point not only increased his running speed, but also added other balance and reaction speed. Then, Suabai jumped off the railing and continued to run towards the darkness. As for memory and fighting, he doesn't plan to test it. Memory. When Suabai recalled Zhu Yingying's memory, he realized that he had made great progress. Some details are also easy to remember. Fighting skills are still more difficult to test because there is no reference. But Suabai is confident. Now that an adult is in front of him, he can easily defeat the opponent. Then, Suabai ran in the dark for more than 20 minutes, and finally reached a remote location. There are some vegetable fields around here. If Ligong district is the most remote area in Zhejiang city, then this place is the most remote area in Ligong district. Suabai walked into the vegetable field according to Zhu Yingying's memory, then walked around the graves among the vegetable fields, and stopped in front of an old tree that had withered. Then, he looked around, picked up a dead wooden stick from the side and dug a few times under the old tree. Immediately afterwards, a purse covered with mud was dug out by him. Seeing this wallet, Suabai was overjoyed, but he didn't care about the dirt on the wallet and opened it to look at it. Then, he saw the 100 yuan bills full of them. Seeing the money inside, Suabai's heart suddenly became happy. What he lacks most now is money. Now he didn't expect to get so many windfalls, faster than he sold coffins. I will give you the incense the next day. Suabai took out the money in his wallet, looked at the photo above, and thought to himself. Now that he took other people's money, he naturally wanted to show something. Then, he put away the money in it, buried his wallet in the ground, and started to return the same way. On the way back, he consciously stepped on the grass and cleaned up his footprints when he came. Although there is no surveillance around here, it would be better if there were fewer exposed clues. Sorrow. At this time, a small voice appeared in Suabai's ear. Hearing this sound, Suabai stopped and turned to look at the sound. Then, he saw a long black and white thing swimming in the grass. Silver ring snake. Suabai recognized this thing at once, and his heart was slightly cold. This coral snake can be said to be the most venomous snake in the country. If anyone gets a bite, he can see the king within a few hours. Suabai stopped in place, planning to wait for the snake to leave before leaving. This kind of snake is too dangerous. At the same time, he also found out that he was a little rash when walking through the grass at night. This kind of silver ring snake, the most favorite thing is to appear at night, if you step on it on the grass, I am afraid that I will go to the hospital tonight, but it is easy to reveal its flaws. But at this time, an idea suddenly popped up in Suabai's mind. Then if the golden coffin is dead nearby, it gives you basic attribute points. What about animal deaths? Will there be basic attribute points? Suabai did as he thought of it, picked up the stone from the side, and threw it at the coral snake. The stone slammed into the grass with a slight whistling sound. The coral snake was hit in the head and its body shrank suddenly. Seeing this, Suabai picked up the stone again and smashed it. This stone hit the coral snake's head again, and instantly smashed the coral snake's mouth crooked, seeing that it was dead. Seeing this scene, Suabai thought for a while and picked up a wooden stick from the surroundings and slammed it on the head of the coral snake. The centipede is dead but not stiff, but at this level, the snake can't die. Within a short while, he smashed the head of the coral snake into a smash, and he could not die again. It doesn't seem to work. Suabai waited for a while. Before the message of the golden coffin came, he shook his head slightly, picked the silver ring snake, and threw it into the depths of the grass. In this test, he completely understood that this golden coffin is only for people, not animals. However, after killing this snake, Suabai was not without gain. When he found out that he was hitting a snake, his fighting skills were very superb. You need to know that the snake head doesn't stand in place to be beaten by people, it can also run around randomly. Then, Suabai continued back the same way. He was very careful along the way, for fear that he would encounter venomous snakes such as coral snakes again. Fortunately, he did not encounter any other snakes along the way. After getting on the road, Suabai cleaned himself up and cleaned up some grass leaves and some grass seeds. After doing this, he went home along the same path. His journey back took him about an hour, and the time has come to more than 11 o'clock. After returning home, Suabai first counted the money dug out of the ground. Found the money here, 3,642 yuan together, plus his own money 749 yuan, together is 4,391 yuan. For Suabai at this time, this is tantamount to giving charcoal in the snow, making his life a lot easier. Then, Suabai began to launder some money and set it up in the living room. Many of these money are stained with dirt. If someone finds out, it will easily arouse suspicion. Moreover, the money has been left in the soil for a day, and there is a heavy muddy smell on it. You can smell it lightly at this time, Suabai is very cautious about everything, for fear of getting into trouble. After placing the money in the living room and holding it down with some small debris, Suabai suddenly thought of something very terrible. If the police are very vigilant towards the resurrected, then the resurrection of him is discovered, then the matter is serious. Thinking of this, Suabai walked towards the bedroom. Then, under the bed in the bedroom, he found a set of clothes and pants. This is the suit he wore when he was killed. Originally, Suabai wanted to keep this thing as a memorial. After all, it was the first time he encountered this kind of resurrection. However, judging from the police's attitude towards Zhu Yingying, he felt that he still couldn't stay. Picked up the clothes and stuffed them into the bag, Suabai opened the door and walked downstairs. When he was going to the corridor, the door beside him suddenly opened. Is room 401? Brother Su, go out so late. A middle-aged man wearing a vest, looked at Suabai and asked suspiciously. Suabai was taken aback, moved the bag back without a trace, and smiled, "Yes, Uncle Wang, I just finished school and want to go to the coffin shop to tidy up my things." "Oh, okay, but pay attention to safety at night." The middle-aged man nodded with a smile, and then closed the door. Seeing the door closed, Suabai was relieved and continued downstairs, walking towards the coffin shop. The middle-aged man named Wang Dki is a part-time worker. When his father opened the coffin shop, he often asked Wang Dki to take the coffin away, so Suabai was very familiar with Wang Dki and would say hello when he met him. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Out of the apartment building, Suabai entered the coffin shop. He took a stainless steel basin from the corner of the coffin shop and poured his clothes and pants inside. Then, he poured the blood-stained sawdust from the corner of the wall on his clothes and pants. These are the waste he had produced by covering up blood stains before. At the same time, Suabai also cleaned up the surrounding wood and other things, leaving an open space. After finishing these, Suabai closed the curtains again, walked to the warehouse, and used an axe to get some pine shards and threw them into the stainless steel basin. This pine is also called blood dragon wood. It is the wood produced by the pine tree dying, aging, and corroding, and the oil of the pine tree is soaked into the wood. The wood is oily and burns very easily. Miu Miu was made by his father. But until he died, he didn't get his hands out. Is now regarded as waste utilization. Looking at the brazier that had been prepared, Suabai paused, picked up the lighter to light a pine mingzi, and then threw it out of the stainless steel basin. Fiery flames burst out from the brazier, shining on the coffin shop. Seeing that the fire was on, Suabai walked out the door again, felt the speed of the downwind with his hand, and then opened the window some cracks. According to his estimation, this kind of gap can not only ensure that the smell of burning will not be smelled by neighbors, but also ensure the oxygen in the coffin shop. In fact, if it is an open flame, the burning smell is not very strong, and if it is smoke, the smell is strong. But everything is careful, there is always no problem. After finishing this, Suabai found the bucket and mop from the warehouse behind, and began to clean the blood stains on the ground. Boom boom boom. And when Suabai was doing things intensively, there was a knock on the door suddenly. Suabai's body stiffened slightly, and he looked at the door without any movement of his body. Boom boom boom. However, the people outside seemed to be sure that there was someone inside, and they were still knocking on the door. Seeing that he could not hide, Suabai took a deep breath, put the mop on the blood stain, and walked towards the door. Who? He asked outside the door. It's me, Zhao Kongqing. A man's voice came from outside the door. Hearing this voice, Suabai's heart suddenly burst. Zhao Kongqing is Zhao Mingshan's brother and a plainclothes policeman who participated in Zhu Yingying's battle before, and he knows him. Brother Zhao, what's the matter? Suabai picked up his emotions, feeling that he would not show any strangeness, and opened the door. Zhao Kongqing was still wearing the leather jacket he had before, standing at the door. At this time, he looked a little depressed. I don't know if it was because of the death of a colleague that affected him. After the door opened, Zhao Kongqing frowned slightly when he saw the burning brazier. What are you doing? I'm cleaning, these are garbage in the store, I plan to burn them at night. Suabai said calmly. Hearing what he said, Zhao Kongqing looked at the wet ground and nodded, then you pay attention to fire safety. After finished speaking, he paused. I am looking for you this time because I want you to help make 2 urns. The urn. Suabai immediately understood what he said. These 2 urns are for his colleagues. What kind of wood do you want? Suabai thought for a while and asked. Hearing his words, Zhao Kongqing frowned, and then said, are there any recommendations? There are Nanhai Huanghuali, Indian red rosewood, black sandalwood, golden nan. Suabai said the ingredients he had here, and then said, I recommend red rosewood. This kind of wood is hardwood. Compared with the softwood of Jin Si Nan, it has a heavy feeling. It is not much different from Nanhai Huanghuali and Indian Pterocarpus. It is also red. It is more atmospheric and expensive. It's also more affordable. Well, yes, that's it. Zhao Kongqing nodded. You can write down their names and ages, choose the patterns, and I will be able to make them in about 2 or 3 days. Suabai walked to the counter, took out a notebook and handed it to Zhao Kongqing. By the way, how much is it here? Zhao Kongqing nodded and asked casually. You can give 700. Subai replied. Hearing what he said, Zhao Kongqing chose the pattern on the notebook and filled in the name on the notebook. The price of 700 yuan is indeed very fair and very cheap. Some factory processed urns are probably at this price. Let alone handmade. Subai's handicrafts are also good here near this old street. Then, Zhao Kongqing put down 700 yuan, I will pay the money first, and I will come to you to pick it up in 3 days. Okay. Subai nodded. That's right. At this time, Zhao Kongqing seemed to think of something and looked at Subai. His eyes are very sharp, like a falcon, as if he can look directly at people's hearts. Subai saw his eyes, and his heartbeat accelerated slightly. At this time, he even felt that he had just revealed any flaws. Zhejiang City has not been very peaceful recently, please pay attention to your safety. Zhao Kongqing picked up a pen and paper and wrote a series of numbers on the notebook, if something happens, call me. Well, okay. Subai nodded, and agreed. Then, Zhao Kongqing left the coffin shop and walked into the darkness. Not long after, a police car drove out of the darkness and drove away. Subai looked at the police car going away, and there was a cool breeze. He felt a cold back on his back. At this time, Subai realized that he did not know when he was leaking fine cold sweat from his back. Subai discovered that Zhao Kongqing's aura does not seem to be much weaker than Zhu Yingying. He is also the resurrected. He frowned slightly. But immediately, Subai put this thought behind his head. From Zhu Yingying's memory, he could only feel that Zhao Kongqing was very strong, and there was nothing unusual about it. Besides, how can the resurrected be a policeman? Shook his head, Subai closed the door, picked up the stick on the side, and pushed the sawdust away from the stainless steel basin to make the fire burn more vigorously. But this time he was also lucky. Although he encountered Zhao Kongqing while destroying the evidence, he did not reveal any flaws. Otherwise, it's really a big trouble. Zhejiang City has not been peaceful recently. Subai put the stick aside, and frowned slightly when he remembered what Zhao Kongqing had just said. He didn't know why, and suddenly remembered what was discussed in class this morning. The disappearance of girls from Zhejiang No. 2 Middle School may not be accidental. Now in this city, in addition to Zhu Yingying and her own murderer, there may be other wicked people. Be careful about safety in the future. Subai thought for a while, put the money away, and picked out a piece of red rosewood wood from the warehouse. There is nothing wrong tonight, reading www.yuyuganshu.com. He planned to make the ashes of the 2 policemen. After picking out the wood, Subai measured the following with a ruler, and saw the red rosewood wood with a wood saw to make 2 cuboid shapes. Then, he saw the 2 cuboids apart, then took out the polishing machine from the side and began to polish it carefully. This series of movements is very skillful. Now the Federation is promoting cremation, so Subai, the coffin shop, often receives orders for selling urns, and making urns is no worse than coffins. By doing this, I was able to achieve that at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, everything in the stainless steel was almost burnt. Seeing this, Subai stood up and stretched his body. There was a crackling sound suddenly coming from him. At this time, in his hands, a very beautifully carved urn had appeared, and the picture on it was vivid. Subai has been taught by his father since he was a child, and his carpentry skills are better than some teachers and fathers. This is also the reason why his father passed away and he can still receive a coffin and urn business. After that, Subai lifted the stainless steel basin, walked to the faucet, and washed water into the ashes, making the ashes into a paste. Then, he walked to the street again and poured the paste down the drain. After finishing these, Subai was still a little worried, and washed the stainless steel basin again, and by the way, cleaned up the traces on the street with water. Hey! He exhaled and wiped the sweat from his forehead, feeling satisfied. Now, the clues to his rebirth are cleared. But immediately, Subai smiled bitterly. What is this? He was killed, and the murderer had to cover up the traces of the crime.